Welcome everyone, and this is another section of the semester that we are starting again online, and I'm so glad to see you, even though I can't see you, but I know that it's a wonderful time for us to study together. Our topic and our subject is about Christians and in culture. Are we ready to study together? So let's start our class by going through the course outline and be able to understand what you need to do for this class. So as you have seen from the topic, the descriptions is intended to facilitate a deeper understanding of the relationship between Christianity and culture. The relationship of Christians to culture is the singular current crisis point for the church. The course will help Christians to better understand and interpret culture wherever they find themselves. It's not difficult, but it's easy. It is about learning how to assess the ongoing relationship between Christianity and culture, and how cultural awareness, along with critical skills for critiquing culture from a Christian perspective, enhances ministry and leadership effectiveness both in the church and within the society at large. You might find yourself in this kind of situation, but with this policy you can enjoy. The first half of the course lays the biblical, theological, historical foundation for Christian understanding, while the second half of the course is more of cultural. The seminars will feature an interdisciplinary range of lecture and group of activities and discussion if we eventually come back to the class. For now, we're going to do online, so we just have to go by what we have. Now, the learning outcome, as usual, people used to know, to overcome goals of this course is to help learners understand the relationship between Christianity and culture, more specifically through the integrations of reading, lecture, discussions, and personal life experience. Learners will one, identify the different way in which the relationship between Christianity and culture has been understood by Christians throughout the history of the church. Secondly, evaluate different models of cultural engagement in light of scripture and their effectiveness in helping the church fulfill its scripture or mission. And then 3, analyze the way culture shape and evangelical Protestant expressions of faith, Christian faith on other denomination, understanding the place of culture analysis for identifying, responding to some of the contemporary issues and facing the church and the church Christian leaders in today's situation. Analyzing the complexity and tension that most Christians face when it comes to relationship within and to the other society. Develop skills in exegeting, interpreting culture, and become more sensitive, critical, and theological informed interpreters of culture. Now, most people find it difficult to interpret what culture looks like, but with this study, we can be able to interpret what it takes to be. Again, we have textbooks that have been mentioned. We're going to use major textbook. I have it here. Is Christianity in Culture. If you can see that for me, Christianity in Culture, it's there. So it's a very big book, and a study on biblical theologizing in cross-cultural perspective. So most people find it difficult to know, but we're going to use, this is the major book and other sub books and other mission of the church, which will help us to be able to identify what we have to do. Schedule for the first week, part 1, which is September, class introduction, which we are doing today. I introduced myself already, but it's unfortunate that I cannot find and introduce who you are. But one day we'll meet again, and then we'll begin to find ourselves. Okay, then part 2, which is going to be in October, the basic idea and origin of Christianity and culture, identity of the world culture, which is and part 3, which is going to be November, which has to do with the component of your worldview and ways in which it is informed by faith and culture, and so on and so on. Part 4, which is human being in culture, culture from God through culture, God's attitude towards culture, the meaning via cultural form, and communication within the culture. These are things we're going to work on this semester to see how we can understand the situation. Now, the requirements are easy. If we come back to class, you have to do individual. The grading system is going to be 30% for this first month. If you can be fair enough, you can go by it. But after the online classes, when it's over within first 5 weeks, then we will do one class attendance is still 20%, and individual assignment, group assignment, mid-time, and assignment or unannounced tests or quiz are there. So these are things we need to do for the section, and by so doing we'll be able to understand where we're going. Let's come back to our topic on our book. It says Christianity in culture and culture. There are two things. One of the difficult things the church and the people face in a new environment could be the problem within the relationship between knowledge and piety, between gospel and the culture, or culture and religion. We can say Christianity. I don't know for you, but the church faces that any time they find themselves. Now this problem has appeared first of all in the presence of two tendencies. One could be the church, second could be the scientific or academic tendency, but it's number one. Number two will be what may be called the practical tendency, practically where people find themselves in the community, in a new culture, new environment in which they have to practicalize this training that we are giving to you in our daily system. Some men have devoted themselves actively to the task of forming right conceptions as to Christianity and its foundation. To them, not fact, however, travail has appeared worthy of neglect by them. Truth has been cherished for its own sake without immediate reference to practical consequence. Now, some, on the other hand, have emphasized essential simplicity of the gospel. The way in the misery, we ourselves are sinners. Men are perishing in sin every day. All this gives sort of excuses and kind of things that we think might be possible. Now, when you talk about Christianity and a culture, the focus is on the worldview, concept, and principle. First of all, you can talk about Christianity form, pattern, and the process. Second, you can talk about the culture, form, meaning, and model, and the usage. So these two things, which is Christianity and culture, they have a form, they have the background, they have all that takes to begin. Somebody stood, nobody made it available. So when you talk about Christianity and culture, someone feel like God is in the culture, or God coming in the culture, or God through the culture. So God through culture is focused on God's attitude towards culture, supracultural, meaning via cultural forms and communicating within the culture. Now, The concept of the worldview is originally replaced the reality of faith and belief, via culture and its practice. So people replace these things today, and I don't know for you, but when you replace the culture, it becomes a problem. So we need to understand and be able to know where we're going. The question is, what is Christianity and culture? So tactically, or somebody waking up from sleep and you ask him what is Christianity, who has not been into Christianity, will tell you that Christianity is group of believers. Christianity is people who come together confessing their faith and what. And then culture could be also a kind of norms of what you call things that have been made in order to guide certain groups of people. But we'll find out the more appropriate definition after this lecture. Now, what is your concept of Christianity in culture? Now, concept, and see, individually have a concept idea, so we're trying to find out yours. And what is the biblical ideas of Christianity and culture? Christianity in culture, what is your biblical idea? Well, people would think that culture can be a form from the Bible perspective, because if you look at the story of then, you see that in the old time, during Jesus' time, there were culture and people were going by the culture, and it should be respected, whichever. So I believe that in culture we will find that which is part of us, and which is for us to be able to identify the reality of the culture. Forgive me to bring you to this end by saying that such Christianity, it's not difficult, but we need to understand how it should be going. So Christianity in culture is what we are dealing with now. Now, when we talk about Christianity in culture, we specifically talking about the gospel. The gospel is the sole means of escape. Let us preach it to the world, while yet we may not compromise our faith. Now, when you look at the Christianity and culture, when you bring them together, one must overrule another. No matter what you do, it's either the Christianity overrule the culture, or the culture overrule the Christianity. But what we are saying is that the reality is that it must be overruled by one. Okay, so let's look at it that way. Or we can say, so desperate is the need that they have no time to engage in vain bubbling or old wives' fables, while we are discussing the exact locations of the churches of Galatians. Men or people are perishing under the cause of law. Now, in certain systems, sometimes when you get to a community, you discover people are caged by the law. The law is controlling people. The law is channeling ways in which people can live their lives. The law also brings things that people look at it and also want to follow. But when we are not careful, we will be overwhelmed by the law. And when we are carried by the law, certain things in Christianity will be taken in advantage of that. And so we will not be able to control and be able to go ahead with whatever it takes to be. Now, in this book, it's vividly that when you look at the context of the book, it really gives us a good things we need to know about this. Now, it talks about the perspective of what do you talk about culture and Christianity. It's talk about the morality or the mirrored reality, which really bring out the answer that the concept model of the reality in people's head. It is virtually right when you look at it this way. As we study this, we'll understand that the writer forward this issue to help the church to understand. He says, I introduced a course entitled Christianity and Culture, or in Culture, into a curriculum of a school of mission, world mission. And fuller, this was to be a theology and anthropology. The intent was to lead our career, or our career missionaries into a solid grappling with the multiplicity of cultural and theological problems that becomes burning issue for those who seek to communicate Christianity to the members of another culture. When you find yourself in your culture, it's different because you can be able to overcome the culture. But when you find yourself out of your culture, you find it difficult to be able to know where you are heading to. So the writer says its whole purposely was to help in a different culture. The first 2 times we offered this course, we made do with the output of reading, including like when you start asking people to read, it is tough because they don't have that chances. The effort has been an exciting learning experience for all the people who are learning about Christianity and culture. So today, also the reason why we are studying this is to be able to know exactly the perspective, okay, what we need to be able to do in our when we find ourselves in a situation that demands what do you call it, demand open life, open situation, open reality of that. So let me take you back to the book for a little while and to understand what this guy says. Mirrored reality when it comes to Christianity and culture. It says, centuries ago the Apostle Paul wrote, what we see now is like the dim image in a poor mirror. Okay, what I know is only partial. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 12. Okay, it says it has taken Western science generations of trials and errors to come to the same recognition. Perhaps the newness of the insight that scientists kept coming up with misled them to assuming that they were finally seeing reality directly. Okay, they see reality directly when they go for mission, and the purpose of this course is to help people who are really in a face-to-face reality of mission. Now, mission in isolation is not a mission, but when you come across people who are on face-to-face missionary, they find it difficult to communicate with people because of language barrier, because of cultural barrier, because of certain things that are different from what they see. Now, forgive me if I can say this, that most of us in Africa, we are going into Christianity because it was built by the foundation laid by the Westerners. Now, culturally, this is different from the African context, but still on the other side, we get to know exactly how we can do. Right. While the scholars are setting the dates of Jesus' birth, the world is doing without its Christmas messages. The representative of both of these tendencies regards themselves as Christian, but have a little orderly feelings between them. Can I say that now the tendency we're talking about has a different dimension? When you talk about the church, it has, yes, the church be a form that shows a brotherly love. We say we are one. But not everyone that is in the church is controlled by that law that it's been sounded as for Christianity. And some just follow what people do, but right in them there is no brotherly love in that. So that is why we can say little brotherly feeling between them. But when you go to the logical scientists, now the scientists, some of them are Christian and some of them are not Christian, but even though they are Christian, their faith is different from the genuine Christian who are not scientists, because certain things are being prescribed by them, that this is how the world began and this is how we see things and this is how everybody is looking at the reality of things. Let me assure you that no, the scientists are far different when it comes to the reality of Christianity. So the Christian academic, now for example, the Christian academic test accuses some of their brethren of undue emotionalism, of shallow argumentation, of a cheap methods of work when it comes to the reality of Christianity. And on the other hand, your practical men, those who are practically in the field of mission, man is overloaded in his denunciations of academic indifference to the dire needs of humanity. I don't know if you get it there, but when it comes to the reality of Christianity, when it comes to the reality of culture, now knowledge is very important there. But people don't believe on that. They said you can just be able to adapt. But how can you adapt to certain culture when you are not being trained and being implanted in your mind what is right and wrong concerning certain group of people? So you can go to a place, but still you cannot be able to do the right thing. Now most scholars, or rather the scholar is represented either as a dangerous disseminator of doubt, or else as a man whose faith is a faith without work. Like in James, when he talks about faith, show me your faith without work and I will show you my faith with work. So most people said let's go by faith, and by faith means doesn't whether you have the education or you don't have the education, as it shows, it means you can be able to practicalize all that it takes to do when you find yourself in a community of that such principle. May I say that it might be possible, it might not be possible at times, but in a nutshell what we are saying is that the tendency that we are trying to bring out, that people see the reality of Christianity or see the reality of culture being together and be able to have one controlling one. Now it's a point that we need to argue about it. I wish we have this in class. Physically we can talk about it. I believe after the first 5 weeks we can come back and draw out those kind of questions and react to them. So put the back of your mind that which one among the two, is it Christianity overruled culture or the culture overruled Christianity? Some will believe, will say culture, because if you don't follow people's culture, how can you penetrate and how can you dispose or be able to share the gospel to the people without adhere to their own culture? Now we find it difficult because the Westerners brought their culture in the Christianity. That's why some community in Africa find it difficult. But thank God things are going the way it is. A man who investigates human sin and that of God by the aid of dusty volume, carefully secluded in a warm and comfortable study, a thought of men who are perishing in everyday life. Why? Because they have no reality when it comes to the issue of what we call relationship in culture and with Christianity. Let me now pause here to tell you that this introduction of the subject is to educate you about where and how and when we can implement culture when we find ourselves in this situation. Our first hour has come to an end, and I pray that we will meet after this first hour to continue the second hour lecture today. As we go for the break, I wish you the best and see you in the next class as we continue together in this study.